The March 26th regular school board meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'd also like to thank the board directors that showed up tonight. I appreciate your attendance so we can have a quorum and keep business moving forward. So with that, we'd like to begin with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll need a motion to adopt our agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Then moved and seconded. Are there any question or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Here it is. Next, moving on, we will need a motion to adopt our consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we move on to public comment. I see that there's none. And moving on to section 4 reports, the Meridian School District Athletic and Activities Report. Mr. Brian Michelson.
That's why I was chairing.
It's
It's a new location. I just didn't, new time. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Good. Is he still up there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, is this guy? Oh, fancy.
Fancy.
All right. Athletic report for the year, the 2024-2025. What I like to do every year, and I know most of you have been here for a long time, but for those of you who don't know, what I do is I go through and I highlight, talk about each season, middle school, high school, and then I have comparisons at the bottom. Kind of a numbers guy. I like to see when things are trending up or trending down and why. So I always like to kind of be in the know. On our fall side for both sports, we were down in participation a little bit. With the fall side, I do attribute that a little bit to last year's numbers had increased numbers of folks doing equestrian. We had like 10. And I include that in this report just because it's a unique thing that we do. So I don't really, I would say the numbers are very, very similar, which is great. A lot of folks out participating in sports in the fall. Numbers are consistent. I mean, last year, I think we had 2 more volleyball players, but you still have 3 teams. So it's great there. On the middle school side, I think, and I would have to go and check that the 7th and 8th grade classes are smaller than the freshman and 8th grade classes, which is why we saw a dip in participation. It's not necessarily that fewer kids are participating, it's just a percentage. Looking at the winter, numbers were way up at high school in participation, and numbers were down at the middle school level. And again, I think it's that number of students who are who are in each class. Some things that are pretty cool is we saw an increase in the number of students that were participating in unified basketball, which is, I know that y'all were able to participate and come and watch the game that we had. Nooksack is becoming a better partner on that side. So they had partnered twice, but they had actual partners this year to come in and play with the athletes. So saw more of their kids participating. Felt like our entire cross country team was on the unified team there for a bit. Super cool. We're getting to the point where we may be talking about Nooksack splitting off and Meridian and Nooksack having our own independent teams. So we're going to look at that. Yeah.
I have to say, I was a little disappointed that we only hosted 1 game this year. Would there be opportunities to host more next year?
Yep. Last year we hosted all 3. Nooksack didn't host any. And so I wanted them to have an opportunity for their community. And so we said, hey, why don't you guys take 2 this year? We'll do 1. And then the next year, if we're combined, we'll do this. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and their community, one of the comments that Tom Harmon, their athletic director, shared was that there were as many people at their unified basketball game as there were at a normal basketball game, which is
That's great.
yeah. Bowling numbers are up, the wrestling, girls wrestling and boys wrestling numbers are up huge. I think I say this every single year when I come do this report, but the turnaround of that program has just been phenomenal from where it was when I came in and I was helping Kurt, and it's just a testament to the coaches that we have, and the culture that they've created, and it's just such a cool group of kids and coaches. So And then boys swim and dive at Linden, we had one student who kind of participated, but then decided they didn't really want to. Those off-campus combine sports are difficult because the students have to find their own way to practices,
Mm.
and that can be a deterrent. So we don't usually have a ton of kids who participate in boys swim dive. We did have 3 on the girls' side, and that was pretty cool. Again, on the middle school side, the numbers are consistent. We have enough for 3 teams for boys and girls basketball. Boys wrestling was big. Girls wrestling down a little bit this year. That'll come back up. We did have a ton of freshman girl wrestlers this year, so you saw those numbers come up. And then volleyball is steady at 4 teams. We do cut, and I think we cut maybe 5 students this year, but there was a year where we had like 80 girls signed up for volleyball, which is so cool. But we run into a space thing and then also a safety thing, and it just becomes untenable for the coaches. So unfortunately, we do make a little cut there, but this year we had fewer students participating, so the number that we cut was fewer. Actually, I'm not even sure if we had to cut this year because we said we might be cutting,
There were,
and then some, oh, were there?
There were.
There were a couple, okay. So I know that we weren't sure, but spring numbers. The high school numbers are through the roof, which is just super awesome. Baseball is steady, boys golf is steady, girls golf is steady, boys soccer, and this number is now outdated. We have 65 students out for boys soccer. It has become this just awesome thing. We have varsity, junior varsity, for the first time in Meridian school history, we have a C team for boys soccer, which is not something you see at the 1A level for soccer. You see it for the Bellingham schools and some of the 2As and the 3As. But to have the amount of students, and it is an incredibly diverse and awesome group of kids. And I attribute a lot of the recruitment to some of the paras that we have at high school, and to Mrs. Shuvalova, who's been instrumental in letting our ML students know that this is an opportunity for them to participate in sports. So it's super cool.
Brian, sorry, who's coaching the boys soccer C team?
So we just hired, his name is Evan. His last name is German. Give me a second.
That's fine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he is a super cool kid. I actually had the opportunity to go and watch him one-on-one coach. And I see a lot of coaching, a lot of soccer coaches in particular, because I spend a lot of time on the weekends with my wife watching her coach soccer. And so I get to see a lot of soccer coaches, and this guy it's his first time ever coaching. He's never done it before. And he is in there and he is so invested and all in. And the students, a lot of the ones who are out for C team, they're trying super hard, but there are some who are just out there to have fun. And he's just like, man, we need to be doing these things different. I was like, hey, yeah, keep working that. I love the fire. But just realize kind of some of these kids are here to be here. And so there might not be that expectation from them, but I love that you're pushing.
So that's cool.
He's going to be awesome. And he's just going to continue to learn and grow. So
you had mentioned you watched him coach, so where did we get him from?
So really lucky, we have our assistant varsity coach, Roberto Guzman, who is a graduate of Meridian, plays for Whatcom Community College, or Whatcom College, I'm not sure which it's called now. And Roberto has actually recruited our JV coach, G Singh, and then our C team coach, Evan, I forget his last name.
That's right.
But he's recruited it, and I'm impressed with G as well, like his knowledge and understanding. It's really cool to have. This is the best core group of soccer coaches we've ever had, with understanding of the game and passion and fire. It's just
You say G Grsavic?
no, different G.
Oh.
This guy's full name is Gurparam Singh, but he goes by G.
Yeah.
But the opportunity was he had to go into their supervisors.
Yes.
So it wasn't that he had to visit him somewhere else. It was there for supervision.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question. But yeah, and I got to coach.
No, it's fantastic, and I love that we have alumni coming back to coach.
It's great. It speaks to the program and the community and everything, so. Softball numbers are up. We have a JV team, a solid JV team for the first time since I've been at Meridian. We flirted with the JV team once or twice, but never quite gotten there. And this year they got their first win. So it's the first JV win that we've had in, I don't know, we'll say 10+ years. That's another program that you just see the growth from where it came from to where it is now. And we won't see the wins and loss or the wins necessarily this year, I don't think, because the team's so young. but the investment and the excitement and the youth movement, it's really cool to see. So,
It was exciting to see the boosters put some money into that program too,
Yeah.
so that the girls can have pride in being a part of the program.
it's awesome. We've got a good thing going there. We have a good thing going with all our programs, but it's that one that had been struggling. It's awesome. And then on the middle school side and the unified soccer 10, that number is gonna grow exponentially because we always get a whole bunch of kids who come out late, and that doesn't start until April 14th. And then on the this other side, baseball, girls soccer, track, the track number is actually up to 90 now. So, and it's, you know, the track is actually started for middle school spring, but baseball and girls soccer have not. So those numbers will go up and down here too. But then, and the numbers are down a little bit, but again, I attribute that to the fact that, you know, the number of kids who are participating at 7th grade level and 8th grade level are less than what the 8th grade and last year's 8th grade, and last year's 7th grade class were. So let's see. We have hired 23 new coaches this year. It's crazy. Every year it feels like we have vacancies. What's nice is we don't have coaches who leave the area anymore and then don't tell me. And then it has happened at the middle school level a couple times where people who filled in as C team coaches just like up and move. And I text them like, hey, you ready to go for next week? Like, hey, I live in Poulsbo now. I'm like, so you're not coaching? Oh, I thought it was a 1-year deal. Like, okay. A lot of them are college students, so it's a learning process for them as well. But 23 new coaches right now, and actually I sent this out before this happened, but we've already hired our middle school head track coach, Jake Dennis, who, if you don't know Jake, you need to get to know him. He's a phenomenal teacher, individual coach, awesome guy. We are still looking for an assistant middle school girls soccer coach. I have interviews Friday. Middle school assistant track coach. Waiting on posting that position until next week. And 2 high school football coaches. We had 2 of our coaches resign, just family stuff. So we're looking for 2 new coaches there. And then facility improvement stuff. I always like to keep y'all up to date on what's going on. We were able to, through our booster club and the golf tournament that the athletic side of the booster club puts on, we're able to purchase brand new wrestling mats that go upstairs. They have not been installed yet. Coaches want to do a deep clean of the area. I'm just thinking, deep clean of the area. And then they also want to make sure they do it after baseball season's over, because currently baseball uses that space as a batting cage, which is something we're trying to figure out for the future so they don't have to. So we have new netting and windscreen for the fast pitch team that has not yet been installed, but we have it. We got a new water reel for the fields, new practice fields for the high school soccer team and the football team. The football team was out next to the FFA barn last year. That is not going to happen this next year. We're moving them back closer. That was kind of a 1-year deal. The field got really muddy, really fast. And it just was like, oh my goodness. So we are moving them back into a different space. And then we did, as we always do, thanks to Ellen Terpsma, we updated the Hall of Fame, the Wall of Fame. The 2024 is up, 2025 is coming. It's going to be a big class. We're excited. And that's with the change in tightening up standards. We still have a ton of kids who are just super high level athletes. So we're excited about getting that up.
Are the updates digital?
So we have a digital side and then we also have a physical side. And the digital side is more inclusive, I guess, is the best term I can use. Like I am in the, you know, the electronic 6th place shot put, not to brag. But then the hard copy one is a little bit higher standard. You have to be 4th place or better in an individual event or as a team or all state and all that jazz. So but yes, we have both, and the electronic one does include the folks that are in the hard copy, but and that's available online. And also we have a touchpad in the gym floor that was recently fixed that you can go in and scroll. And we see folks going through and looking at that all the time. I think it's super cool. People from other schools looking at the old people. Sorry, the folks who play sports. I was not looking at people. The people who
Back
play
to
sports.
1911, there's some.
Yeah, seriously, it's really cool.
Any progress on
Track board,
yeah,
it's back on my radar. It was on the back burner, so I appreciate you putting it back on my radar. Thank you, Michelle. But yes, yeah, we're working on updating that. The last spot where I left it, and I have to go back, is I was waiting for our track coaches to give me updated distances, times. And so because what we have up there right now is outdated, as you know. But we want something that is easier to change, that's not so time, doesn't take as much time. The last time we replaced it was during COVID, and I was down there with a razor blade scraping off people's names to get new ones on. So we want something that's a little easier,
Yeah,
takes less time. And I think we have something in mind that'll work. Switching over to events. These are the events that we hosted this year and that we will host. 1A and 2A district volleyball were held at Meridian this year. Will be the 1A and 2A site moving forward. We have the best 2 gym setup, and the 2A schools really enjoyed how we run things. We try to do a good job of accommodating people's needs and putting on a good tournament. By district baseball tournament will be at Joe Martin Field in Seaholm on the 7th and the 10th and the 17th, Saturday and Saturday. I believe those are the 2 Saturdays, right? 7th, yes.
of what?
Of May. And that's really cool. Last year, the baseball team played there at by districts and then was able to play in the state title in the same stadium. So that was super cool.
on that note, since we're hosting that, how do we benefit financially when you do that?
The people who work the event get paid by the district. Also, the Booster Club sells concessions at the event, and also by not having to travel to Seattle, we save money on gas and drivers. So
Is there a gig disbursement?
there is, yeah. So the money and then also it was held in Seattle. The schools down there really don't come to events, and so it's easier for the folks who would come, which are Walker County folks, to get to the event. So there's more money that comes into the district, and then it is split between the 2 districts and then dispersed into the schools. And then the Athletic Booster Club hosts the Trojan Storm Classic Boys and Girls Basketball Tournament every year. It's actually been 2 years, but it's fun and it's cool. One thing that we noticed this year is there were 3 girls teams and 3 or 4 boys teams who were at that tournament who ended up playing in the state tournament, and one of the girls teams that played actually won the state tournament. So it's a very competitive tournament that we host. So, and that money comes back in, and this year that money went towards paying some stipends and things. So we were able to help offset some shortcomings. So it's good. I think that's it for, yeah, this is just a breakdown. So you can see the highlighted yellow are areas where they have gone up in participation, and where it's not highlighted, that means there were fewer students participating.
So highlighted goes up?
Yep, highlighting is up. So that gives you an idea of, like, if you look at winter, and boys basketball is a bad example because they cut, so you're never really going to have that as a yellow. But we had increased numbers in every single, and this year, same thing. We capped that year, and there are events.
Well, look at spring numbers.
Yeah.
Overall. I mean, that's crazy.
Yes, yeah, it's just absolutely wild. And 209 in the spring, that was a record last year by like 30. So we have gone up by 30 and then up by 30 again. So we may see a drop, it's maybe a class gets smaller, like we talked about. But
Yeah.
it's still super cool.
So.
Yep.
I'm just curious, so fall, we saw numbers decrease overall by 3 students, but are we off, or do we have more offerings, or are we missing some kids because we aren't offering something?
No, I don't think.
Or do you guys have any input on it?
So we're down 3 students, but it was more of the equestrian. Equestrian had like 10 last year. And so this year they only have 5.
Got it.
So it's a decrease of 3. Oh, sorry, were you asking that? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to turn.
I was wondering if they hear from
Like,
kids.
I think spring sports are more like we're like individual based kind of. And so it's like, oh, if I'm not very good at volleyball, I can't really like be on a team. But if I'm not good at golf, I can still do it, if that makes sense.
Or track.
Or
No, that's
track,
great.
yeah.
I love that. So it's
There's
just
I
more
think-
diversity.
I like
Yeah, like I think spring sports like attracts a lot of like newcomers, where like fall sports, it's more like team based.
Got it.
Yeah.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and it feels like there's like a lot of options
Mhm.
overall for everything, regardless of whether people like participate in them. Like you said, like equestrian's down,
That's
like-
great.
people know about it.
Well, yeah, you like right track, and sometimes in the track meets, I'm like, okay, heat 5. Or 110.
Of the board.
But everybody's competing, and I think it's healthy to compete, so even the ones that like might be in the 5th heat, they took first in the heat, they feel like they're winner. It's a good thing.
Or they PR'd by 2 seconds, so you're competing with yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of those sports are super cool, because like golf, you're
Yeah.
trying to take one stroke off your last match, and then you feel like, hey, I'm getting better.
That's true.
Just wanna highlight Brian for a second. The success of the amount of students doesn't happen by accident, and a lot of his work in hiring and making sure, like you talk about tournaments, people enjoy them because you do a good job making sure people who are running them know what they're doing. And invite them in and they understand what the program is that you're wanting to do. And the other thing that Kurt and I see a lot is Brian's really hard on himself in trying to set the standards, and so it's important, he said it several times, to have high participation in this school, right? So, anyway, nicely done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, just on a side, I think one of the things that is my ultimate goal as an athletic director is to see C teams in, it would be awesome in every single sport. So JV and C team in every single sport. That would be, I think I could retire. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I think I would retire if I was able to get
Well, we used to have that,
back in the day.
yeah, the day, like the 90s.
But it is harder because there's transportation and there's commitments, kids work and do. Yeah, there's just a lot of responsibilities there. So I think you're doing really well.
Thank you.
Much to be proud of.
Another great win too for the athletic department, which I don't know if we celebrated it. I know we talked about before, but afterwards was the Diana Access in Court presentation and stuff. That was great. So I'm excited to see more of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And on that topic, I think we talked about, for when can we name the football field?
So there is a committee it's in process right now. We've had one meeting so far. We have another one on April 16th. And so we're meeting to discuss some names that we feel would be appropriate. So, and then we'll present that information to you.
Cool.
So we should hear back in the next. We at least have one more meeting, and then we'll see where we go as a group, and then maybe another meeting after that before we set it. So we'll have information to you guys.
Would the timeline be that it would be launched for 2025-6 school year?
Yeah, we would have the name out there 2025.
Perfect.
All 20.
Yeah, but I want to, commend you on a great year so far. I mean, it's not over yet, and I know it's a lot to manage, like, of course, being in all the games and watching you work and things that you gotta do, but it's like even the extra stuff, like the holiday tournament, you think about all those teams that we had to manage, all the referees that we had to get, we had the hospitality room going. I mean, granted, you had some help, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it went flawless, and then what I thought was cool is how many people were willing. I think you had to run home once, they were willing to step up to cover it, like, yeah, Brian's gonna be gone for a couple hours, you got something like Steve Miller was one. I was happy to do it, but everybody just, I mean, it was such a successful tournament. I mean, everybody enjoyed it, even the school district down south, and sit with other coaches and teams and stuff. It was a pretty cool event. So I commend you for, for the extra that you do outside of the day-to-day routine.
And we do a volleyball tournament too.
Yes,
JV.
yeah,
That's
there's.
Hugely successful.
Yep. And I do not have a lot to do with that, but I will say the key in having success at any level, and I know that you all know this, is having a good team. And I could not do the things that I do, or the athletic department couldn't function as it is without people like Randy Kurt, Steve Miller, Chris Tutterow, Colin Anderson, Sharon McCormick. Those folks put in so much extra time, and they just like being part of it. So I'm lucky that I inherited some of those folks from years prior. So it's great to have good folks working for you. It makes things go a lot smoother.
Absolutely.
Just a couple things, district-wide, 32 team playoffs for football, was adopted, by the districts. It's not a state thing. But, the 1As were short of the threshold to meet a 32 team bracket, which was, I believe was 44, and we had 43. So they dropped the 1As to a 24 team bracket. So, and then it worked its way up, and we were unfortunately not able to make it. We did get 3 teams from our conference that made it in, but we were not one of those teams. We were the 4th. So I'm hoping to have better success next year.
And this was for football?
Football, yeah. Let's see, statewide stuff. With the 32 team bracket was seen as a success for football, so there are conversations about expanding brackets for all sports and they're starting to take shape. I'm not gonna toot my own horn, but I did propose something to the District 1 board, like pre-COVID about this, like this is the way we need to go. And I was shot down because, oh, it'll never work, it won't happen, et cetera. And they gave me a laundry list of reasons why no. And then all of a sudden, 6 years later, like, this is great, how come no one thought about this? Screaming here, so, and the ADs in the Northwest Conference were like, Brian was working on that, weren't you? And I was like, yeah, and I got no's from a lot of people, some people in this room. But that's neither here nor there.
So what does that look like for us? Because I've gone to multiple different state tournaments for varying athletics,
Yeah.
and when I sit there, it's so frustrating knowing that the number 3 or number 4 from Waukegan County would dominate, and we didn't get an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll see it as a expanded like state, so it'd be like regionals, how you have regionals for basketball, but there'll be expanded regionals, so they'll just increase it. So you play like multiple games, multiple regional games, you just double that, and then it'll come back to the region. So it's actually pretty easy, like math wise. You just double your allocations and then you're good to go. But for the individual sports like cross country, it's where it gets a little bit more complicated. But I think they figured out a way to make that work as well. Track's easy because you have times and everyone runs around the exact same surface. But for cross country, every single course is different. And so you can't use a standard qualifying time. So that's one of the big pickups that they're trying to figure out. The same is true with golf. Like each golf has a different difficulty. So playing North Bellingham is not the same as playing Lucas Trail. So there are things they're working to figure out, but they're heading in the right direction. Amendment 7 and 8 regarding the transgender athletes was voted on by District 1. There was a lot of discussion. The athletic directors voted to support the decisions that were made by the school boards. So just representing like this is what our school board wanted. And that went through. We get 1 vote as a lead. So it was majority, and then it went on to the state, and we presented that information to the state. We were sent something back from Chris Reichdahl saying that it violates state law. They're working through the process. So they basically said, thank you for letting us know how everybody feels. We're working on this. So, but the voices of the different districts was heard, which was important to see how everybody felt. And then I already talked about the events. So I believe that is it. Do you guys have any other questions or anything?
Was the vote for 7 and 8, amendment 7 and 8, that was for WIAA, right?
Yeah, it was, an amendment to the WIA.
Right, and so I thought the final vote on that wasn't until April.
It was presented, and then Chris Reichdahl tentatively sent out a thing saying, thank you for letting us know, but at this point, this is the information that we have to give you. So there's still more coming, but they just sent that out preemptively, letting us know like, hey, we understand where everyone sits, but just so you know, this is kind of where we're at. Okay. So.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
You get me that.
Thank you. Okay, next on the reports is the legislative update with Dr. James Everett. To provide an update to the board.
So this is a point in time. This year is the long session, so when I sent this in last week, things have changed already. And so this is day 73 of 105 days. And just some highlights. A lot of what we get, I still serve on the legislative committee with WASA, and then they have a newsletter they send out called TWIA, which is This Week in Olympia, and it gives a breakdown of what happens with the bills and where things at. And as of Friday, just reminders of how bills have to progress through the legislature. So they have to pass the opposite House Policy Committee by April 2nd. Then they have to pass the opposite House Fiscal Committees by April 8th. Then they have to work on the floor to get agreement, because bills in both houses have to look the same before they're approved. And then you get reconciliation of the budgets and bills by the end of the session, which is the 27th. So there's a lot of talking going on, and before Monday, they hadn't released the Senate and House budgets yet. So you have the governor's budget that gets dropped before the session. And then you have the Senate and the House budgets that happen on Monday. And next week we'll get Senate and House capital budgets that deal with modernization or new skill centers or providing repair money, that kind of thing. So we don't have that information yet. As far as the budget situation at the state legislature last Tuesday, a forecast came out that said that they anticipate that the state will be 844 million below what the November projections were, but still up $10 billion. So you hear a lot from the legislators about how we're in a downturn. We're not in a downturn. It's where the funding is being spent. So the things that they want to do with the legislature don't match with the revenues, but they have revenues coming in. So both budgets came out on Monday. The Senate's projecting over 4 years, $17 billion in increases because of taxes that they've introduced, and then the House 13 billion. So they don't look the same, but they all have some form of taxation in it, which isn't popular, and a lot of it's on the heels of education. We don't have enough for education, so we need to raise taxes.
Dr. Everett, could you please say those numbers again, the shortfall and the increase?
Yep, so for the House on the bottom, so Monday's release was 13 billion is what they're generating in revenue with their tax initiatives, and then the Senate was 17 billion. The projected budget shortfall was between 4.9 and 8.7. It's still an estimate, but it's figured to be 6.9 or 7 billion. And revenues are still increasing, so it's less than what the projection was, but they still anticipate to be about 10 billion before you get to either of the two budgets where they increase taxes.
And that shortfall is interesting because it's like double, like that's a big number,
Right.
you know, for the state to go over here, there.
And some of that is there are things they want to do, but some of that is maintenance that they have to, and we can talk about maintenance on the legislative side. They have CBAs for state workers that they have to meet what they've projected that they're going to do with their contracts for compensation. So I think that's 4 billion, 6 or 7 billion. So there's a portion of that it's not even up for discussion. It's already been contracted, but they have to follow through, and that's going to come through the budget.
I met with prime contractors last week in Tacoma. There's billions being spent for new shipyards for Navy fleets. There's crazy. It's there somewhere.
The Republican revenue proposal was released a couple of weeks ago, and the Senate Democrat one was released last week. But both models have a number of different taxes that they're introducing. And so again, it's over, and I don't know if I said this, but it's over the 4 years. And so 13 billion for the House and then 17 billion for the Senate.
Over 4 years.
Over 4
Yeah.
years. Yep. Yep. And
That
then
means it's so much.
the big three that we know about, I will tell you that transportation bills are dead.
Mhm.
What's interesting about the legislative process is that you can have bills that die and some that are identified, even though they've died because they haven't met a threshold in the process. But they may be deemed necessary to implement the budget. So NTIB, and they can be resurrected. Or aspects of a bill that died may resurface later. So we know the transportation bills, both the House and the Senate versions, are dead. But on some of the bills that are being proposed, there are aspects of transportation. So we may not see the full scope of transportation support, but there are for students with special services that aren't being transported, we may see that come through in the final budget, but we don't know what the bill will be that they can introduce bills right up to the end. So we'll have to see. So the two that I will talk about are the MSOC and the special ed. So 5192 and 5263 had huge hearings last week and actually had 5,100 people sign in pro. So the MSOC bill had 3,500 sign in pro. And then the special ed had 2,600. And there were 10 people that signed in con. And 28 that testified, and all of those were positive. So what will be interesting then is to see how well the legislature translates that into funding to schools. So in looking at the bills or at the budgets, it doesn't look great. Just doesn't look great right now. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks in terms of conversation to be able to help support the needs that we have in schools. I don't know any other way to say it. It's just frustrating.
We were here, it was 2013, we went through this before. Cause I remember we actually got down, we had to give out RIF notices and it was painful and it was awkward and it was like, how do you communicate, you know, because it was what it was, but then they turn around like, I mean, the 9th hour. Through the budget, was that 2013?
It might have been earlier.
Well,
Whatever it is.
So for the 12-13 budget.
I remember Tom was here.
Yeah,
It was like a
it's
year after
around
Tom.
that time.
Yeah.
When there was a lot more stringent rules on alternative learning programs. Yeah, so that.
But it was just like this, the unknown, it's like, well, we don't know. People ask Ranch, like, I don't know what to tell you. We don't know what to tell you.
Well, so some of the issue for us is just the structure of the long session. So we're not done, and I've shared this before, we're not done until the 27th, and it takes OSPI 3 or 4 weeks to be able to go through and identify what was allocated to schools. And then the drivers, depending on the district and the number of students and how many are special ed, and all of those different things are factors that have to go into that equation for OSPI to then let Daniel know, what are we getting? Well, what we had before, and then where does that put our own budget, right? And so because of that structure, we also have to meet the state deadline for informing staff of any kind of reduction. That's where we have to do that. The responsible thing is to plan for worst case scenario, do that, and be ready with a plan on callbacks or rehires based on what we get. And the problem is our staff and our system goes through a lot of anxiety before we get to the other side.
And May 15th is that.
That's the deadline to have it in people's hands. Yeah. So we've been communicating that there is going to be a deficit. We've been communicating that the nature of state funding for education, and we see this all around us, is not positive. It hasn't been for 3 or 4 years. And so we've been having conversations and sharing. And what we will do is we will continue to take this information. The work that we're doing is taking this information and trying to identify as best we can where things will land for us to come up with the educational program that we'll bring to you on the 16th of April. So this is what we're preparing for. And then you'll have a second opportunity to vote on that reduction plan. Move forward. A couple of other pieces that are just things that we are interested in. Transition to kindergarten. I shared earlier in the year, there was a gap in funding because they didn't understand or identify the proper amount of students being served by TK across the state. And so both of the budgets and from the House and the Senate provide some supplemental funding to help support TK. The TK bill that I shared earlier in the session that was so offensive is dead. However, it could be resurrected, and there is a lot of talk about, and there was another bill that the Senate brought forward that keeps it, it's essentially the way it is now, but it caps the number of students to either last year or this year, so that what it does for the legislature is it allows them to plan on the number of kids. So if you're a district that hasn't had TK and you want to bring it in, you have to wait until another district closes their TK and creates capacity.
Wow.
So it's nothing to do with what needs are. Right? You can have a community where you have, like ours, childcare desert, or inability to do early learning, and there's high need. But because of funding, you have to wait till capacity opens elsewhere.
Well, last year we staffed it without even having the funding, right? Until kind of did emergency staffing. For
No,
that third one, for that third spot, how did that work again?
that's essentially what occurred, because we didn't have any information from OSPI that they had identified the number of students. So we always look at how many students do we have, what funding do they bring in, and can we afford the staffing for that? Right? What we didn't know is, as we continue to serve kids who needed support, is we didn't know that they had projected below the state. So I think they projected to fund 5,500 and they had 8,500 across the state. So they needed to make up that gap. Such a big difference. Yeah. So that's how that played out. And so messaging from Chris Reichtal earlier today said both budgets have supplemental funding. It looks promising. So the fact that both the Senate and the House have the same provision to try and take care of that, they need to come together and have one budget that's in both is promising. Levy lid and LEA discussions. There are districts in the state who have been pushing to increase the levy lid. So right now it's $2.50 per 1,000 assessed, or 2,500. And that's the cap. There are districts, just throw out Bellevue or Seattle, that could generate a lot more through taxes. And there are legislators who think it's great. Let's let the taxes for, communities cover the cost. And so you have communities who will gladly pay a higher tax rate. And then there is also a provision called local effort assistance, where the state provides support for districts who can't meet that threshold. We used to be able to get LEA funding. We don't qualify anymore because we don't hit their threshold, because our assessed values increased. So a bill that will allow a district like Bellevue or Seattle that's large to raise their levies and be able to raise more money is only going to exacerbate the difference between districts across the state. So that's why any effort to increase the levy lid has also had an effort to have an LEA factor. But that likely won't help us because we won't put the threshold for the food. So we'll have to wait and see.
Is there any potential of reassessing that as we see the greater disparity between your rural schools and your?
It won't happen this session, so it's uncertain that it's gonna happen. But what we understand is that it is actually individuals who legislators who are pushing for this for their communities. Right? So they're frustrated. Their communities are happy to pay for more, and they're capped. And so the way they're looking at it is we ought to be able to serve our communities. I mean, I get it, but it's not the same across the state. And then during COVID, we had some bills that allowed people who have retired to be hired and support, especially administrative ranks. And so that sunsetted. And so there's a bill. So this was something that was big in the TWIO for those districts who need people who have administrative certifications. You can still access those folks, and they're still working through the process.
Would they be contract or just rehires?
Well, each of those will be contracted, but they're short term, because
Gotcha.
if you're retired, you only have so many, like you could only do 800 hours before, and they could do 1,000, like, so it changes. But what happened is that rule was sunsetting, and so there was a push to try and increase that, bring it back.
Thank you.
Scott Smith used to do something.
Mhm.
And then next steps for us is just to continue our advocacy, continuing to be present. A lot of times it's weighing in on testimony or signing in as pro and saying that this is beneficial for school districts. when we see changes in the operating budget come forward, being able to speak to those and stay engaged and talk to our legislators. So, things are gonna ramp up, a lot's gonna happen, and things are gonna come out in terms of information pretty quickly as we get closer to April 22nd. There was, a couple weeks ago, there was speculation that the two houses are so far off that they may not get done in time. And now they're saying, no, they'd be crazy not to get done. So we'll see. Yeah. That's all I have. I mean, it is kind of pulling something out at a point in time when things can change tomorrow, right? But it's been contentious. It's been hard to feel like the legislature recognizes the state of funding for education is precarious. So.
But our next big day will be April 16th, when we have some information in front of us prior to the 27th.
I did want to say thank you for all the time you spend looking at the numbers of this term, and it's 73 of 105. How many days have you spent advocating for our district?
Thank you. I mean, there are times where the things that was important to us, like TK, right, or the skill center pieces and things that we're really banking on, quite frankly, are ones definitely that I think are important. And then special ed, we just are not able to fund our needs, especially. So appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I know we don't pay for our lobbyists, but we do, I mean.
No, we
you
advocate.
work-
We
Yeah,
advocate.
right, it's like,
Right.
it's wonderful, thanks.
Okay, next up for reports is Jay Yeager with the asset preservation report.
Hi. I have my annual asset preservation report. The asset preservation program, it's basically a system that was put in place to hold school districts accountable for their facilities where they receive state money through the SCAP program. SCAP is the School Construction Assistance Program. So the schools that we have that are under that are Irene Building A, nothing at the middle school, and then everything at the high school, minus the North Gym. Each year I have to do a building condition assessment of all of those facilities, ranked on a 100-point scale. Excellent is 100%, good is 90, and then this is a lot of fall off here when you go from good to fair. You go from 90% down to 62%. So there's a lot of judgment there on my part on have we made that almost 30% fall off, and it's kind of a weird scale there. And also it's important to note that we should see the facilities on a pretty steady downward climb over the 30-year lifespan of the building. So we want to see every 10 years about 15 to 20% fall. So that way you don't have, after the building is 30 years old, then you become eligible for a SCAP funding again. So you don't want to see sitting at 85%, and then all of a sudden you're 5 years away, and now you drop down really fast, right? So as I go through the report, most of our facilities are at that 10 to 12 year age. So you'll see we're down in the 80th percentile. Just to stay on track there. So I've highlighted a few important areas in this report. If there's anything you notice and want to talk about as I go through, I'm going to go really quick through it. Just please feel free to stop me. So the first one we have is the Meridian High School, the South Gym. That rating is at 85%. Down 4% from last year. One of the things that took it down was the wall finishes went from good down to fair. That was where I mentioned what warrants that 30% drop. But the age of the gym and the pretty heavy use inside of there, took the wall finishings down. Wall finishings are the paint, the tile. There's a lot of tile starting to get that's getting knocked off and stuff. So there's a lot of maintenance items that we do during the summer. But I do this assessment. I did this assessment last month, right? So I have to assess it. Honestly, what I see, but knowing that a lot of that stuff is gonna get fixed over the summer. About it for the South Gym. Next building we have is the CTE building at the high school. That rating is at 86.25%. Down a little over 2% from last year. That building held pretty much the same. This is an important one. So I did downgrade the domestic water distribution. We're finding electrolysis happen in the hot water systems. Found the cause of it is during construction, there was never a grounding strap put on the hot water pipes. So at the elbows, we're starting to see a lot of leaks are starting to happen there. So that was first discovered about 2 months ago at that school. Not on here, but that's also been discovered here at the middle school from when the retrofit happened in 2017. So you can't fix that, but you can stop it from happening. So we have since then added grounding straps to every water heater for every building of the district.
What about sacrificial anodes? Will that work?
So I talked with Pete Nielsen from Chemtech, who does our boiler water. And that's one of the things we were talking about. Haven't landed on that yet.
Cause I'm trying to think, cause if maybe you had zinc, which is kind of both, right?
Yep, yep.
We had the zinc softer than copper, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
But again, that stops it from continuing to happen, but doesn't repair the damage that's already been done.
No,
right?
the damage been done is already done, but if
Yep.
it stops it, it'll start eating the zinc, not the copper.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I've never heard of it down on a hot water supply before, but why not?
Yeah, that was one of the things that Pete and I did talk about.
Could you verify something?
Yes.
Or just how the comment's written, in regards to like the South Gym? It has the building details, profile type, and then it gets on the box with the comment. And it says 1960 is a placeholder date. Can you explain that? Cause wasn't the gym built in like 1993-ish?
Yes, so this was something that the ICOS report originally was put together in 2014. The gentleman who put it together from OSPI, he had passed away in the middle of doing this report. 2 years ago, we did our study and survey. The district did everything to update all of the square footage figures, all of those figures to get this cleaned up. Submitted all of that to Randy Newman's office from OSPI, and it has not been yeah. So I will poke them on that and get them moving, because that has been 2 years old for that gym.
Thank you for explaining.
CTE, moving along to the ed building at the high school. We're at just under 83%, down roughly in another 2% from last year. I highlighted this one, exterior louvers and vents for the flashing failure. That's in the commons area, on the south side of it, kind of by where the American flag is, south of the American flag, where water has come in. I highlighted that to note that the leak has been repaired. That was repaired in the fall time of this school year. The water, the visual damage has not been repaired yet. That was kind of on purpose to make sure that we actually did get the leak fixed. So that's on the list for this summer to get that repaired, so that way you don't see that damage.
And then your condition rating will be edited.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for that, because, we've talked, but that's been tricky, because at different times it surfaces and different times it.
Exactly. And then lighting, this is one that we've made, I'd say 90% of the repairs on, but we still get some that continue to come up. That's the emergency ballasts in the high school that'll start randomly beeping because the batteries die on them. We've made, like I said, probably 90% of those, but we still get a few, so I've left it rated low.
And that's what it's like when we're in there in the evenings and you just hear, you think it's.
It's coming from all over the place.
Oh, I thought it was our security system, but I was like, that's weird, because you can get in the building.
That sounds fancier.
Okay. Okay,
So that's the batteries for the emergency lighting of it.
well, it's also a deterrent, because I thought it was. Thought it was our security system, like you don't have very much time, you gotta get out of here.
That's it for the ed building, the elementary school. This one took a little bit more of a hit this year. We went from 86% to just under 82% this year. Some of the reasons, like, sorry, I read that wrong. This is the greenhouse. The greenhouse at the high school, took a little bit of a hit. One of the reasons that it took the hit was, and I failed to highlight it, I apologize, but I guess first off, if you look at the amount of things that you're storing a system of that size on, when you lower one item, that the main score drops a lot more. But the one thing that I did lower was movable furnishings. So they have all of the stainless steel tables in there, and they're starting to show a lot of damage, a lot of wear from the students just over the years with all the pots and what they do in there. So
But they're still functional, they're just not.
they're still
technically
functional,
pretty.
correct?
Okay.
Yeah. Now moving on to the elementary school. Like I said earlier, this is only building A, does not include 10 Mile. We went from 84.5 to roughly 79.5 this year, so about a 5-point drop. This one did not change from last year, but this is one of the big items that is holding that score down, is the exterior windows. If you recall last year when I did this report, we talked about issues with just, let's say, garbage windows that we got from construction. And we were able to do a moisture analysis last year. I can't remember if I reported on that during this last year or not, but so we stuck probes in, checked for moisture in the walls, underneath all the windows. There were a couple areas where it was slightly elevated. Those repairs were made. That was the first repair of last summer's work. There was one repair that had to be made. That was in the assistant principal's office. That was made right away. So that was done, but the windows, so everything's safe, there's no moisture, we're good, right? But the windows themselves are still, they're falling apart, they're fading. They're starting to delaminate. I have recently developed a relationship, so those windows are made by a company out of Canada called the company is called West Tech. I just developed a relationship with their local sales rep. Working on getting them out to walk through the high school. We have the same windows there as well to walk through the high school and the elementary with me and see what we can do with warranty. I've gone to the general contractor and the warranty that they got for the windows has been expired. So, but I'm gonna try and go directly with the manufacturer and see what we can do.
I thought there had been some communication with the GC that they were going to help out with that, or did they already do that?
They helped out with the repair that I spoke about.
Okay.
So they covered that cost 100%. And that was a pretty significant repair. So that was a Tiger Construction. Extremely helpful. They're very good to work with.
And that was like the brick repair and the walls,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
That was great.
And that was above and beyond.
Yeah.
Tiger's been really good.
That's the second time in three, or I'd say second time in 3 years, I think they've come back to do repairs. Well past the warranty period. And pretty high dollar repairs too.
And these are only our south facing windows at both campuses?
Correct.
It beat up pretty hard.
Sorry, the high school is the west facing windows.
Okay.
And the elementary is the south facing.
Yeah.
I did also downgrade and working with Joe, we downgraded under communications, the distributed communications and the monitoring. There's the communication from building A to building A is extremely poor. There's equipment that was repurposed and not upgraded, and that equipment is at 35 years old. Technology doesn't last for 35 years. So.
Can you give us an example of where you find it's poor, the communication between the buildings?
I'm gonna pull back to Joe, I apologize on this one.
That's great.
Yeah, so in this one, when 10 Mile was built, they had an intercom system that was installed back in 1990.
Mhm.
That intercom system is still in play. And what happens though is we've added a new intercom system at the new building that would create an overlay that's supposed to bridge between them. That bridge doesn't always work. So it's regular that, you know, they have bell schedules, they have announcements that don't get over to the 10 Mile, like the IOD.
Do we have concerns about safety with that if it's not consistent?
Short answer is yes. We usually, you know, we get over there, once we get a report, we go and address it. And they do have a separate system over there, so that was mitigated, but now that that's no longer, it's no longer in the office over there where that is, so.
If there's an episode or situation at building A. And we don't have the intercoms working, what is the form of communication to get that relayed over to building B?
That would be, I would leverage that to Tyler. From my standpoint, we try to address that right when we get notified that there's an issue with the intercom. And there's layers, there are layers to that system, so you have the clocks, the intercom, and the bells. And so you can have one or the other not work at any particular time.
That's like in those boxes on the wall, right, that show everything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like that, yeah. Yeah, those have been there for a long time.
Tyler can speak to it better, but a lot of it will fall on personnel. Nate's office is over in building B.
Yeah,
so-
it's
so we-
terrifying though, if you have to physically run over there if there's an issue.
Well, we have these new phones.
Okay. You just never know.
No, but I mean, this is something that Joe's been, the district's done, but Joe, can you speak to the phones and the capacity, and at least it may help satisfy a little bit of what your question is, but we need to find a way to fix it, but anyway,
No,
just take a second.
Yeah. Makes sense that being at some point we're gonna have to replace. What we've done is we've switched all of our district staff, we've switched them over to now a district cell phone. Because we had some staff that were doing stipends, and then the cell phones we have, Jay and I worked with a company called FirstNet. And so they are, an emergency response,
Okay,
is what they're geared towards, but they've allowed schools in as well. And it allows us to have, so we have 58 phones in our district plus 30 some odd units on our school buses and all our support vehicles. And so we have push to talk groups.
okay,
And
perfect.
so what our process is through the safety committee is we started just within our safety committee team. When you have a drill, any kind of event, they go on the push to talk group, they announce that they're having an event. And then once we go through testing, that'll be part of our process. So at any time, an event at the middle school, you know, if there's gonna be 70 to 80 people across the district, they're immediately gonna be notified of that. And then you would then activate the event through the intercom system.
Is that part of the test levy?
That was not, that actually was, that was cost neutral. We went from a Verizon carrier and a mix of stipends to the FirstNet, and so there's a small savings.
From a PR standpoint, that'd be a really great thing to highlight.
Yeah.
That we're doing something like that for safety of our students.
So in terms of your question around safety, that's one piece to help mitigate that. The day in and day out communication between building to building is really where we see the intercom not working.
Yeah.
Right, but, yeah, that's an area we need to fix or replace it. We gotta use the right. Sorry.
And that wasn't something that you would have considered for the levy. I know we use levy dollars for salaries, so I'm kind of curious. Did you have to pick and choose, or what happened here?
Yes,
Okay,
that's a short answer to that.
I like short answers, that's great.
Okay.
I'm done
Okay.
now.
So that closes off the elementary school. Any other questions on this report? Okay. Thank you.
Work, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, section 5, moving on to new business, first review policy and procedure 3205, sexual harassment of students, Mr. Herbal.
Good evening. Tonight we have two first readings of policies for the board. Both of these policies are directly from the change in the federal government made to policies earlier this year. The first one we'll start with is 3205, sexual harassment of students. And if you think back to July of 23, that is the last time we updated 3205 prior to November. So in 23, we went through this process to update 3205. We enlisted the services of our attorney, and they provided feedback. And so we brought it to the board in April of that year of 23, and the board approved it. And then we went back and our attorney got back to us and said, hey, we just put this in play. And I made some procedural changes to the procedure. So we brought that piece back to the board, and the board approved that in July of 23. So what we did is we went back to, for the guidance, returned to the 2020 guidelines. And so we are just asking to reinstate the previously adopted, approved school board policy 3205. 3205 is specifically for students, for Title IX issues, sexual harassment, sexual violence. And it is really a detailed description of what procedures we follow on a Title IX complaint. Okay. I included the previously adopted version in the board docs. And any comments were in the little text boxes in there. Questions on this policy procedure?
Yeah, I have a question about this first part that talks about like the effects of off-campus conduct. Like, I know that we've talked about not punishing students for things that happen off campus, like how does that factor into this specific?
So anything, and I'm gonna have to honestly probably get back to you with a very specific answer. But we had a situation that happened previously, and because it did not take place on school grounds, Title IX did not impact that. So the 2020, no, the 20, yeah, that situation, because it took place off campus, Title IX did not come into play. But I want to review the policy and get you a better, more accurate answer.
Are you
So I
referring
will
to
take
when
care of
we
that.
had a policy that we wouldn't enforce, and it was about, I think was it drugs and alcohol?
Yes, that was what I was like referencing. when I was thinking.
Where we,
Okay, then
That's not Title IX.
that's not
no,
Title
but I
IX.
think that's what she was wondering. if it
Just
was
like
the
in
same.
general where we aren't like enforcing things that don't happen on campus.
Okay, so then I think you're going back to maybe the athletic policy,
Mhm.
where if things happened outside of campus during an athletic event or during an athletic season,
Mhm.
on a weekend, there was a party and there was drug or alcohol use, would that still impact? I want to get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but two different
Mhm.
policies. And Logan, at one point, it would have. But I want to review our current policy to make sure I give you the right answer. Other questions on 3205?
Maybe we can just clarify too, along the lines of what Logan's saying is, if it's off campus, but it's still a school event. That's still
Yes, that is still gonna
considered
be school,
school.
yes.
Mhm.
So if it's a field trip to Seattle and something happens and it's sponsored by the school, yes. If it's a weekend party, not sponsored by the school.
Down on the Polar Bar at the end of the Polar Road.
Thank you for the specifics, Marty. I wanna get back to you. Okay. Other questions, 3205?
No,
Okay. And then the next policy for you is again, similar to changes because of the change in the federal guidelines. This is policy 5011. This is both of these are essential policies. This one, similar to 3205, which is for students, this one is specifically for adults. And it covers both sexual harassment targeted at district employees by students, so a student assaulting a teacher or adult staff or employees or third parties. So this is adult specific.
can I ask, just really quick, and we don't talk about this often here, but you don't want to, how do we define an adult?
I would say it says a district employee, so any of our coaches
Staff.
and staff,
Non-student.
Okay.
yeah, non-student.
Non-student.
I just
Yeah.
wanted- Yeah,
And some of our coaches are pretty young,
yeah,
so
And they're getting younger as we get older.
as we get older, they get younger.
So this is
So-
more of an employer standpoint.
Yes,
at How we are as an employer.
yes. Yeah. Other questions? Okay. If between now and the next reading you have, let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
And besides this policy, I think we talked about this before, we also have mandated training, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old business, we got second review and approval Whatcom County capital project contract. Yeah, child. So it's childcare facilities. That's the agreement between Whatcom County and the Marine School District, so I'll need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement between Washington County and Meridian School District.
I second.
Kennedy or Logan, you have any input on that?
I would love to.
Vote to approve. Okay, we have a first and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next on old business, second review and approval. Interdistrict cooperative agreement for the financing and operation of the Whatcom County Skills Center. It's a Washington State Skills Center. Spoke about that last week, so.
Comment?
What's that?
Can I make a comment? There was some community confusion based on, I believe it was the Linden Tribune who covered the board meeting of Linden, looking at some document about this, where there was some confusion that a skill center was also going on the Linden High School campus. So
Did they have a conversation about that? I mean, did they resolve it in the meeting? 'Cause
it was just our community seeing it in the newspaper going, oh, they're getting one too.
when was that? Was that the Linden Tribune that just
Mhm.
came out?
It was last
Was it just
week.
poorly written?
I think so. It was last week, maybe.
So
They were showing them
Oh.
getting their ratings.
I'll have to look because they just approved this agreement. So Linden and Blaine has approved it.
And that's what my comment was.
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
So,
because they're all in support of this particular one going on our campus.
Yeah, I know that there were, I don't know what the conversation, it's hard for me to comment, because I don't know what their conversation was, but I can look at the Tribune and see what the article is, but I know that when Director Brower and I presented, they were super excited.
Yep.
Also wanting to talk about how does this affect their building of a new high school and programs they want to build, right? And then, but I did hear from Superintendent Vanderyacht that they approved it on Friday, probably at the board meeting that you're
Yeah.
talking about, so,
Yeah, it was in the
um,
newspaper.
yeah, so
I
I'll,
haven't checked, I haven't checked.
yeah, I'll
I
take
just
a look.
clarified that there's only one coming into Wacom.
That's correct. There's only been one approved in Whatcom County. That's us.
On that, I'll make a motion to approve the interdistrict cooperative agreement for financing in operation of the Whatcom Skill Center, Washington State.
I'll second.
Been moving in second, any feedback from our student board representatives? Kennedy or?
Yeah, I guess I second
Okay, been moved, then we got a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you on both of those.
Okay, next on to the finance report. Budget and finance report, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Okay, we have a lot going on right now, in the finance department, so we've got, the Washington State Auditor's Office is doing their completing their audit, they were on site today. They've been auditing since the beginning of the month. It's going well so far. They have 4 different auditors. This is our larger audit. We have the financial statement audit, which reviews all our financial statements from last school year. And then, there's the federal audit, which is basically all the federal grants that we've received. They've done their planning for that, and they're auditing the food service, program. And they're also auditing transitional kindergarten, which is, when they speak to it, they're gonna call it ESSER dollars, because that's kind of how it flowed. We had 1 year where TK funding was federal, so that's how it ended up in their hands, so they're reviewing that. And then there's the accountability audit, which basically means they can look at anything they want. That's over 2 fiscal years, so last year and the year before. They're still doing their planning for that. So far, they've identified 3 sections. They're reviewing the learning improvement days, and then they're also reviewing enrichment activity expenditures, so that basically is, what we spend the levy dollars on. And then they're also reviewing employee supplemental contracts. So those are the three areas we know about. I would guess they're likely gonna review the high school septic project. And then we'll see what else they identify for review. I'd say we're probably in for another 6 weeks from them. But we have 3 of the 4 auditors have been here before, and 2 that are in charge were here last year, and we worked really well together, so I'm happy about that.
So are they on site for 6 weeks or they?
No, they're mostly remote nowadays, so if we request them to come on site for some time, they will, and so it's one of the things that I like to do is have them come on towards the beginning and just make them feel welcome and kind of get more of that human interaction with them, and I think it helps, and then I'll go in there, well, like today, I went over a couple times and kind of just sat with each of them and let them kind of go through all the questions that they have, and it kind of just front loads a lot of information to them. They also send out kind of like the request that they'll put out for every audit. And so I've been working through that. I finished that up over the weekend. So they're kind of flush with a lot of work at the moment. So that's good. They should be busy for a bit. We're also in the budget process, as you're aware of. You kind of just the only thing that I want to comment on is you'll see other districts are kind of putting out, their reductions in their numbers pretty early, and just one of the approaches that we've always taken in Meridian is that, once we hire people, we do our hardest to maintain them, and so we're just really cognizant before we put any information out there that we don't want to impact people's lives unnecessarily. So we're really paying attention to when the deadlines are and getting as much information as we can, and having as accurate a picture as possible too, because there's like last year when you look at it, we had to make $2 million in reductions, but we didn't have to do any official layoffs. It's a little bit, we don't know exactly where we'll end up at, but we just went through heavy reductions the year before. We haven't seen the new revenues yet, so we do have to plan for the worst, but at the same point, we're not gonna rush out there and put fear in people that's unnecessary. So just a little bit about our approach there, and we do have quite a few meetings coming up to go through everything that we need to get ready for April 16th. I'd say that's probably on the budget side of things. So I'll look at these reports here. This is the February compared to March. We're down 5 enrollment, but still up compared to budget. We're up 45 compared to budget. And this is the budget status report, which you probably can't read from where you're at. The general fund, as always, just reflects the budget projection report that I'll be going over in a minute, and so no need to go over the general fund, but you can always tie out the figures from that report to this one if you wanted to. And then the only other fund that I really wanted to take a look at was the capital projects fund. There's an $800,000 revenue in there, and that's the donation from the Whatcom Community Foundation, and that is for the Whatcom Early Learning Center. And the ending fund balance is $2,256,000. But most of that's tied up for very specific things, you know, it's tied up for each of those various programs. Also, the money goes in there for technology levy. And then we spend those funds out of the general fund, and then as we spend those funds, we move from the capital projects to the general fund to reimburse it. Actually, can there? One second. Okay, so that's it on that report. The. See if we break this here, right, time for James's superintendent update, but hopefully not. This is January budget projection report. So January's the month that we get squared up from the state for our actual enrollment. And so that's it's a pretty important month. So in the far right side of this report, you'll see the allocation dollars, and those have all been updated based on on our actual enrollment. And so that the top in the green, you can see, you know, we started out at a low of 1776 of September, and then it gradually increased until January, and then we've had a bit of a slow decline since then. We lost 9 from January to February, and then another 5 from February to March. If I were to project, I would guess that we'd probably see that declining trend for the rest of the year. A little bit, that seems to be just what happens in school districts.
But we're still up.
But we're still up. We're still up 45 from the budget, which, you know, provided with significant additional revenues. But at the same point, when we received those additional revenues, we looked at what the needs were. We had a lot of needs across the district. We basically spent those revenues on needs, but we have stayed within the boundaries of the additional revenue that we had. And so those additional revenues, those are reflected for the remaining months when you look at these revenue projections down here. So just a couple things to point out in the revenue side, the right here, 120,000, the special education federal grant. There was a bit of a holdup on the approval on that one, getting some details in there. And actually, I think it was more of like the staffing at the OSPI level, where they just didn't have the staff to get through all the districts. And so that 120,000 is reimbursement for January through December. So caught up on the cash flows there, which is good. Also, this area that I'm circling right here, I went through January or September through December and looked what we had spent so far in the technology levy and capital projects area in that is going to be reimbursed to the general fund. And so I transferred some of that over, and you can see this projection of a couple more transfers at the end of the year as well. I did that for cash flow purposes. On the expense side, salaries were right about on average. The accounts payable was a bit higher than average. And that's just because we pay our fall running start payment in January. And that was 82,000 to BTC and then 190,000 to Walker Community College. So it's a pretty significant amount. So most of that money that we receive for running start just flows through straight to them. We get to keep like 5%. So it's not a whole lot of money that goes to the districts related to running start. It goes all to the colleges. So this is also an important area here, and we've been watching this really closely. If you're this shows like our spending compared to. You know, what the average spending for the year should be at this point in the year. And we're below by about a percentage point. You know, in a really healthy year, we'd be below a few percentage points. But last year we were flip-flopped, we were spending high, we're like our trending and spending was higher than our budget, so being below. With a significant budget reduction is a positive indicator for the district. We've been working really hard to hold the line on expenditures this year. You remember, I spent a lot of early fall working through new procedures to kind of make it easier for us to do that. So we had some like set steps that we would go through anytime we made additions and those types of things. I think that was good, important work that's been paying off for us. And the ending fund balance is $1,812,000, which, you know, I'd like to see. I want to get to where this number doesn't fall below 2 million, but it's gonna take a year. It's gonna take some years where we can have our revenues be higher than our expenditures, and we can put more money towards fund balance. And, you know, it's something we were able to do pre-pandemic, but it's been pretty hard to do that recently. So the next couple of months, it'll be below that 2 million mark, and then we'll receive our tax revenues in April, and that'll kind of bring the cash flows back up, which will bring us through to the end of the year. And we should end above that $2 million. That's all I have for you. Any questions?
I always appreciate how easy it is to read the chart, so.
Yeah, thank you.
I've said it several times, but it's very easy to follow. I appreciate that.
It's good. It pays to be consistent, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I will share, the risk assessment, I think that David, who is the auditor, he calls and we have a conversation, answer questions, and actually he is seeking. Marty, would you be open to him calling you?
Yeah.
Because you've done it before, just to ask questions on your end, but just some questions about how do we as a district know where our finances are, what's going on, just the budget projection report, talking about how Daniel's share what the budget is and what our actuals are, and you just commented that that's not always the case, and being able to have some to share with you where things are was positive, so you could. If
Yeah,
you're okay, I'll
I'd be
let him know.
Yeah, I appreciate the time that you guys give me. My approach is to always be as. Great side trust. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
You know, when I do speak to them too, it's like the conversation go on, I'll throw out there. I said, you realize Daniel, he was the auditor once himself, you know that. Oh, yeah, we know that. And then it's almost like, if you want to end the conversation, like quicker than normal, I just, well, you know, he was the auditor once. Yeah, that's true. I think that's all I have for you.
It does help for knowing what they're looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah. Good report.
I don't have a ton. Another reminder, again, Lisa Gilchrist does just a phenomenal job providing opportunities to highlight people who are doing great work in the district. And so the Thrive Awards, again, alignment with the 5 commitments, but inspiring educator, community builder, communications excellence, partnership, and wellness champions. These are nominations that are due March 28th. So students, parents, staff can nominate people. So she's enjoying reading those, and she's got a committee and they'll work together. And later in the spring, we'll go around and give awards. So those are fun. My last conference was with the Washington State Risk Management Pool, and it was the Association of Governing Body around risk pools. And so a lot of the conference was dedicated to incorporating artificial intelligence into risk pool business and providing risk management concepts, a way for people who manage that. We're talking actuaries, people that play with numbers in a way that I don't understand and can identify multi-million-dollar budgets to be within $100,000 based on all these different factors that you have to when you talk about insurance. And so this is really insurance that we're talking about with risk pools in our experience. And this isn't just for schools. The conference also dealt with municipalities, and so cities and county governments as well. But as it relates to us, we're talking about weather-related damage, things that Jay deals with. We have weather or extreme situations, pipes bursting. These are personnel issues, sexual abuse and molestation cases, things that happen when people drive students places. So all of these are insurance to mitigate situations that happen. And there isn't any detail left out. How do you do? And so, one of the things I've talked about since being on the board is the terminology has changed. Like Kurt is our point person, but we talk about being able to understand some of the terminology around willful disregard. You know what the law says, you know what the rules are. Someone does it anyway. Doesn't matter what insurance you have, right? And then understanding what's going on in a place and not doing something about it is not okay, right? So, you may be seeing things where something was identified, somebody reported something, but nothing was done. And that perpetuates, and now there are lawsuits and things like that. So that's all of the work of risk, right? So that's what that was about. They also spent a lot of time talking about workplace health programming. So that goes back to your Elma conversation and just how to embed those in our systems, and then well-being programs for employees. And so, and again, in an era of extremes, how do we have public discourse, and how do we treat people with dignity? And so there were some sessions on that too. So really helpful. I don't know that I have a need to go back to Las Vegas. I've never been, and that wasn't really.
Never been.
No.
I'll go in your place.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Loud and busy and yeah. The other thing, Kurt and I attended leaders meeting, Latinos in Action, and this is a leadership group that has actually been around since 2001. A teacher at the time, Dr. Jose Enriquez, founded it in Utah and was really intent on how to provide an opportunity for Latinas to be leaders in their communities around service and support. And Bellingham and Ferndale have now started some programming, and these aren't specific Latino multilingual classes. These are very diverse classes that they have a breakdown of 40%, 30%, 40%. And so you have communication, you have learning, and you have opportunities around service and support and leadership. And Ferndale is actually the first district in the state of Washington to have a program for high school, middle, and elementary. And they do a lot with mentoring. It was really exciting. They had the leaders meeting with a breakfast, which was really him talking about what the programming was. And then they had the actual conference where we had leadership classes from middle school. They had elementary people, elementary students, and then they had high school from Bellingham, Swallowcombe, Seaham wasn't represented, Ferndale, Mount Vernon, Burlington, Cedro. So they had student performances, they had native performances, they had all kinds of things, a lot of cultural aspects tied to the service and work around mentoring. So it was really encouraging, something that I know Sean and Robert have reached out and said students were curious, they wanted to know more. Robert asked me, and I told him he should come to the meeting tonight. And busy, so anyway, I'll meet with them and talk with them, but there's some really positive opportunities.
What was the other opportunity we had where the Latino students did get to came on site or?
So we have a migrant. We have a migrant summer program.
This was something else. It took place at the high school. I remember seeing the
I thought
photos.
it was
You know what I'm talking about?
Mitchell?
I just don't know.
Okay.
That was stemmed our conversation about doing the passport.
Yes,
Yeah.
they came and they were all leaders and mentoring and
Yeah.
were they from Western or?
I don't know, I just know it's like a group of students that have been like friends.
Yes.
We're supposed to do that on the Instagram, but.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If you think of it, let me know. You know what she's talking about, but you.
What she's talking about, I was posted on Instagram, so check the page.
Okay. In any case, it was a great gathering, at all districts, several principals from county schools, all district superintendents were there. As well attended. They have a Washington Association of Latino administrators that was hosted in Mount Vernon last year. And that is the group that has also sponsored this one. Again, with the big three, I already shared a little bit, nothing inspiring there. And then coming up, we do have a WASA Leaders Workshop. This is a Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday. And then Limitless Learning. You remember the 4-year grant that we have around the post-secondary. Spring break is coming up. And then we're back here again on the 16th. I do want to let you all know that we do have an executive session starting at 5 on the 16th.
Yeah.
So that will be where I bring you an updated evaluation.
And
I could bring dinner.
I'm not.
That's all I have.
Do we have any information from our student board representatives?
Yeah. So I guess tomorrow now, tomorrow we have our second ever district-wide advisory meeting. We're meeting here with elementary, middle, MP3 like we did last time. And we're gonna focus on the core value of support. And also we're gonna just have each group kind of share like the best things that they've done in the time since we last met.
Highlight your wins. That's really important. Good job.
oh, it's really.
Any information from our board directors?
Or we
I
did have
there
a,
is, I
Yeah, I knew it, we're going through.
yes, the orange shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
blood chispa.
Oh, let's just.
So she's like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Totally
that's a-
different.
It is totally
Yeah.
different. That's a Washington State leadership program around Latinas, and supporting that community through leadership.
Okay.
And we have had, they usually come through the middle school with high school students and they put they're day-long programs, but I'll ask about that. Good job, thank you.
Oh, we did have our cheerleaders were invited to All-State and they did perform. They did not medal, but they represented Meridian very, very well. There were of the 30 some submissions, only 7 were selected and our cheer squad was one of those. So,
Nice.
yeah, that's
There's nothing else. I also wanted to say, we had salmon that was served last week and a little start 3 weeks ago as a soft start, but we have 300 pounds of salmon that we've got
For lunch.
for this year. Yeah, for lunches for this year and next year. So,
It's oh cool. Did that get donated or?
yeah, so it's, no, it's through commodities. So there's a certain amount that we can purchase and then Rob can decide what we purchase. And so,
Yeah.
yep, so they did that last week at the high school. They're gonna
how'd it
do.
go? Did you guys have salmon?
No, I usually eat cold lunch.
I would like to invite for those lunches.
So about 40% of the students chose it.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, and so they'll do middle and high school when it comes up again. And I asked Rob to make sure we don't win. So
Yeah.
anyway, I knew that was a question before. But I'm sure it's really cool.
Whenever we can get locally sourced fresh foods for our
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Kennedy, I saw Pierce got honorable mention for
Oh,
also,
I-
yeah,
that.
it just posted last night, so an honorable mention but for sophomore, I thought
I
that's.
know,
that
he was
pretty good.
huge. Brag.
Yeah, yeah,
Like he had a good tournament.
yeah, he had a
Really
good tournament, but
year.
yeah, honorable mention, he was, of course, he'd be one of the first ones, and then actually Ken and James also did too as well.
Oh, he
But,
did?
but I think it's cool being a sophomore.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
That's great.
Okay, we don't have any other information from board directors. We have the board signatures of official documents and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you for everything. Very good.
Hi, Jim.
Seriously, not kidding.
Let me look. I think it was-